Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today starts with work. I need my room back. Now the weather's changed, these really cold nights, cold mornings, virtually over. This morning was the last coolish sort of temperature where it was down to sort of 7 or 8 around dawn this morning. And that's over now. For the rest of this week, apparently, I'll keep my eye on it, we're back up into double figures overnight, which is fine for the cymbidiums. And I want my space back for now. So first job is to get this outside, which involves going outside to sort of lift it out, going right round the house to come back in, and then actually lift this end over this because of the step. It's a nuisance. So let's go. Means I'm going to let cool air in, but it'll get replaced by warm air from the lounge. So. Strange actually, my son said, aren't these double doors? They are, but obviously when they put the conservatory up they didn't pay for the door mechanism, so that one's actually fixed, even though it looks like a door. It isn't. It doesn't open. So all we've got to do really is get this over here and lift it out over the steps. Right, now we can get this end done. And then we can get these back outside, these smaller ones. So there we go. So that's that bit done. I've got my space back, and I'll be back to do the rest of the chat in a while. Right, that's got that out of the way. It's amazing how much space that took up when I'm used to this big open space, which I never had in the other place. If you think about it, I could only just turn round. Everything was all very enclosed last time. This is quite luxurious as far as space is concerned. But if you think about keeping orchids, this is wasted space. You know, I could get twice as many orchids in here. I can't afford to buy all those orchids, and where would I get them from now, you know? So rule that out, then we'll just put up with the space. But obviously when that big thing comes in again, I have now planned what I'm going to do. Not finite details, but I know roughly what's going to happen in here, so that's okay. Right, so what else has been going on? Well, bringing that in and getting those sharp cold mornings like that, it gets your head into gear for the fact that it's not summer anymore. It's genuinely autumn now, and having gone out to the archery yesterday, the road there goes through wooded areas like that, and there's some leaves turning. I noticed some beech trees starting to yellow in places. So yeah, autumn's on its way now. Days are definitely a lot shorter and the rate of change is high, so they're going to get shorter quicker right through this month and on into next month. And this affects our plants. If you're in the UK and you're not using any artificial lights anywhere, then your plants are going to start reacting if they haven't already. And it's such a slow rate of change, a lot of people don't ever notice it, but effectively your rate of growth is going to slow. What's the next thing? What's the follow-on effect from that? Well, my plants don't seem to be growing as well. It's not that they're not growing as well, they're not growing as fast. They're still growing as best they can in the circumstances. And those circumstances are the days are getting shorter. And so your rate of growth will slow down. Well, if your plants aren't growing as much, you need to do two things. Stop feeding so high, because they won't use it, and don't water so much. Don't water so much. You can break that down into two things. That could mean, like in my case, don't water as often, but in addition to that, don't pour so much in the pot. I mean, during the high growing season with the temperatures and everything, you know, you can almost flood your plants. As long as they drain, you can chuck water on them. It doesn't matter. But as they slow down, it does. Because if you get them too wet by pouring too much water into the pot, you've got the amount that drains out and you're left with wet media. It needs to still dry at a reasonable pace. So the easy way to do that is to stop pouring so much in. Yeah. So if if you've seen what I do, I pour the water in, using a glass with my feed or my RO water. Well, if that was 3 to get that nice and wet for the growing season, well, that comes down to 2 or down to 1. So not so much. And then if you've got media, like the Masdevallias have got quite a high percentage of moss, they like to be constantly moist, not soaking wet. And moss will hold an enormous amount of water. The plants are not growing as much, it's going to stay soggy wet. And soggy wet you do not want. So you might need to adjust how you water. And with me, I chuck water all over the pot when we're in the growing season and I've got the temperatures. Temperatures are gone now. We're about to have a little bit of warmth for this week. We've got a nice high pressure, but that still only means daytime temperatures around the 20, 21, 22 mark. It's not hot, it's just comfortable, yeah? And because the sun's not hitting the roof anymore, it'll make no difference to in here. I'll still only get 19, 20 degrees in here, so I've lost my daytime temperatures. And the days are getting shorter, so my rate of growth in here is going to dramatically slow up. So when you've got things, like I've said, that are high on the moss, instead of watering the pot, trickle some around the edge. Where are most of the roots, mainly, when you grow in pots? They tend to head to the edge of the pot, don't they? Well, the middle of the pot probably hasn't got many active roots, if any in some cases. So just put the water where the plant needs it and don't soak them. If you've got a clear pot and it's got moss in it, you can pour the water in round that top edge and watch it go down the sides. Well, if the roots don't go to the bottom of the pot, the water doesn't need to go to the bottom of the pot. You might have to be that careful, especially if you've got much lower temperatures. So yeah, things are on the change. It's getting into my mindset that it's autumn. Unfortunately, the next thing on the list will be winter, when the amount to do out here goes right down. Watering frequency drops right off. The amount of times I have to mix up feed drops right off. I've made up my mind I'm not going to put the lights on this year. I'm not going to bother. They I don't think they did much last year, and it's a lot of fuss and bother, and obviously energy usage, which I can ill afford, thanks to the government taking half of it away, or most of it away actually. That's caused a stir, hasn't it? You pick on the old people, you wind people up. So there we go. Yes, so things are on the change, and that large frame that we've taken out, that'll need to come back in, and I don't know when. It's totally weather dependent. As I said, we've got a warmer spell now, not warm, but no, cold. Mornings will probably just be on that 10 mark, somewhere around there, 8 to 11, 8 to 12. That's fine. They can stay out as long as they don't drop below that. We'll be okay. But we could get another cold snap next week. We might get what do they call it? An Indian summer, which is a late autumn with good weather right into and towards the end of October. We might get that. In which case, they're staying out there till I absolutely have to bring them in. And as part of the plan to accommodate those, the next change is going to be, I've ordered some deep, larger, strong trays for the deesers so that they can have a greater depth of water, and when I pick them up to move them, the trays will be strong enough, given that they've got wet pots and water in them, they need to be strong, to be able to move them. And I've ordered 2. All of the deesers will go in those 2, even though I've still got another one to split, and one I've decided to leave as it is. But they will all go in those 2 comfortably, so we can accommodate those for the winter. And then those trays are going to go on the bottom shelf of the Cymbidium rack, which means these 2 black tables can go. That means the Cymbidium rack can go right up against the glass, so it won't stick out into the room anywhere near as much. And it's on wheels. When I want to get at things, it'll move. So as you saw this morning, it just wheels around comfortably as well, no effort. They're nice casters, those are. So that's the initial plan, is to put all of the deesers in those 2 trays, put those on the bottom shelf, because they don't need picking up. When I change the water, they will. I'll keep these seed trays for that time, because obviously I'll need to take the pots out and put them somewhere else, and then I can pick the tray up, empty the water out, put it back down, put the deeser pots back in, and pour the RO water in to top the tray up again. And that's once a week. It's not a big deal. The plants themselves don't need anything doing to them. Once I've done the splitting and the repotting, most of which is now done, that's it. They don't need touching till at least the end of next year. The only thing I might need to do next year is perhaps stake some of the blooms, depending on how most of them are. They just seem self-supporting. They don't need staking. But we will have to do some feed, a couple of doses of feed next year. Very, very low feed, but a little bit, just to sort of kick them off. And all of the rest of the plants, it's just a matter of this corner here. I've put the deesers down there temporarily. They're not going to stay there, as I've just said. And on the top where the geraniums are, although that's a nice splash of colour, they're potentially in the way. I still want to keep them. They might get potted up in sort of decent garden containers for next year, so they can go out in the garden. There's no point in putting them out in those black plastic pots. They'd just blow over because they grew so big this year. They've grown well and they've bloomed well, and they look much nicer in the garden, quite honestly. So we may do that for next year. Probably put them in both in the same container to save on the amount of compost that would be needed to fill that container, if you see what I mean, if they're both in there. And then that would be a nice splash of sort of orangey red somewhere in the garden. And it gets them out of here, at least for the summer anyway. But yeah, if I need room, if I need space, they are instant space, because all I've got to do is cut them back so that they become much lower plants. They can then go down on the floor somewhere. So, you know, there's potential to sort those out. But at the moment, they're still producing new spikes and they're still producing colour. They're looking very nice. So I'd like to keep that going as long as I can. They did, last year, if I remember, as we got into autumn and the days got shorter and everything, they stopped blooming as well and they started to look a bit tatty and straggly. So we'll be able to cut them back. So the other thing that's going to change, but not now, but in the spring, is some more plants might be going on mounts. Not absolutely decided yet, but the ones that I've put on mounts recently, you know, this summer through to relatively recently, with one exception, are doing pretty good. The only one that's not is my little Orangus. That's not doing well at all. But that's not a dendrobium. All the other mounts are dendrobiums and they all seem to be pulling on pretty good. Much better than they were in pots, those that have come out of pots. A lot of them are just kikis. And they're pushing on nicely, so we may be adding to the mounts. I mean, Oncidium types do very well on mounts, so do Miltonias. And I've got some smaller ones that would do well on mounts. The bigger plants are just clumsy on mounts, they're not so easy to accommodate. But I've got some that would probably do well. And certainly if you've got climbing type Oncidiums, those that, you know, the rhizome extends upwards instead of just outwards across. If it extended across the pot, then the roots would go down in the pot. But when it starts to climb, the roots sometimes don't get to the pot, so they become aerial. And they can often stop growing relatively short, and they're not a good root system anymore. But if you put those on a mount, with the growth pointing up the mount, they will always root into the mount. They will climb naturally up the mount. So it does actually work. So I might try a few Oncidium types as well. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, so that's that. The other channel, I'm not pushing it, quite honestly. It's not growing. It's just not growing hardly at all, quite honestly. I mean, I loaded a bonsai video which was a look round all my trees and a chat over the work that's left. It was a typical sort of, you know, bonsai video. It's got next to no views. And the gardening video was a full garden tour. Absolutely everything. Looking at all the plants, chatting about, you know, what will be happening through the winter and on into next year and everything. It's got hardly any views, you know, so you sort of come out the end of it, you know, sort of when I got up this morning sort of thing, and I went in to have a look at my comments and everything, and I had a look at the stats, and I had a look at the number of views, and quite honestly, at that time of day when you're not properly awake, you're not up and running, so you're not thinking necessarily as clearly as you do later in the day, I actually sat there with my first coffee and thought, when the hell do I bother on that channel? It's just not working. But I will plod away at it. I will add a video now and again. But I'm not putting lots of effort into it because it just isn't working. And even on this channel, to an extent, this channel is not working as well as it has done. And quite a few of the other orchid channels are in the same boat. I mean, I assume Danny's channel will sort of pick up again because she's been very thin on the ground for that. She's been moving house. I know what that's like with an orchid collection. Probably harder for her because she didn't only have to move the orchids, she had to move all the contraptions because they're all in cases and a lot of those are probably glass. So she had quite a big deal moving her apparatus as well as her plants and into a different environment as well. She's got a lot less light going on now. She grows under light, so to her that won't make too much difference. But she's also got a garden now. When I looked at that I thought, that's a plastic garden, that's plastic grass and plastic looking stones. But if you live in a really, really hot country, there's no point having a lawn, is there? I don't want a lawn, I haven't got any grass. You have to look after it, you have to keep cutting it and trimming it. You know, and then you've got to put, you know, the waste has got to go somewhere. So I'm not keen on lawns, I never have been. I like a nice freshly mown lawn, I love the smell of the cut grass. But then you sort of, as soon as you've done it and you've tidied it up, you've got this huge pile of stuff, you know, then you've got to clean your lawnmower, especially if the grass is damp. And then you sort of think, I'm going to have to do that again next week. And you end up with a job every weekend that can take sometimes a couple of hours, you know. So I don't like lawns. I like what's going on here because it's relatively easy to look after. I've got the gravel beds, I was given those, I can't really do much about that. The only problem with those is the weeds, you know. But every garden gets weeds, unless you've got a plastic garden. I'll assume you don't then. But yeah, some of the orchid channels are getting thin. They're not posting as often. And just looking at some of the content as well, others are possibly in the same boat as me, struggling for content. Struggling to find something you haven't filmed recently. Struggling to think of an idea for a video that you haven't repeated already several times. And it can get difficult. And it may be, perish the thought, from my point of view, that the orchid YouTube world has had its peak. And it's not had its day, but it's had its peak, it's had its glory days, and that might be the case. Some other subjects have gone through that. Sometimes they pick up again and sometimes they fade. We had an awful lot of new orchid channels with the pandemic. The people are shut at home, aren't they? Well, as long as some of the nurseries were operational, you could still buy orchids online and get them delivered. That was still going on, apart from the complete lockdown sort of periods. But so you could possibly still get some orchids in, and as people were tending to stay at home most of the time anyway, people started new hobbies, and part of that hobby might have been to also do a YouTube channel. And then when everything gets back to normal, people start going back to work or doing what they did before the pandemic. Suddenly they haven't necessarily got the time. But maybe the glory days of the good orchid channels with good content in large numbers, masses of choices to what you want to watch, maybe those days are fading away. Maybe they're not there anymore. We shall see. It'll be sad if that happens, but you know, it's the way of the world. I mean, people, certainly the younger generation, they don't want an hour-long video. They'll fidget. They'll fidget and, well, I'm sure I should be doing something else. They're twitchy, fidgety people, these young people nowadays. They like the shorts and the reels on Facebook, you know, where a video comes up and starts, 3 seconds. No, next one, 3 seconds. Next one, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. Next one. That's, to me, that's not entertainment. You're gaining nothing. All you're doing is flipping through short-based stuff. And some of it's absolute drivel as well. Some of the top YouTube channels are so rubbish. People just being stupid, basically. Still, that's what people want to watch. That's the thing. You get to choose, you know, and is it the person creating the stupid video's fault or the people who watch it and make it famous and popular and go viral? Whose fault is it? The person who made it or those who did that to it, you know? Yes, so things could be on the change. We shall see. You know, maybe some people will go the way, as I mentioned, Brad's greenhouse. That was all orchids with a few carnivorous plants. And then you had a job to find an orchid for the carnivorous plants. Then he moved house and then it all dried up. He went away. Rachel was virtually all orchids with a bit of garden. And then gradually it went over to more garden and less orchids. You hardly ever get an orchid video from Rachel now. And that's one of the bigger channels, you know. So things are possibly changing. They may never change back again. Who knows? We have to ride with it. I mean, I've always said, I look at this in two different ways. Growing orchids is my hobby. I would do that if I didn't have a YouTube channel, because it's my hobby. And now, in addition to that hobby, I've got a garden that I quite enjoy being in. Well, if I want to enjoy being in it, I also have to enjoy working on it and getting Hannah to give me a hand. So I'm just looking out there. I think the van's just come back. Next door are still trying to move out. They still haven't successfully done it. As I got back from archery yesterday, they were just arriving in a car. They'd been out somewhere else in his new girlfriend's car. The van was on the drive at a stupid angle. I had a job to get in. And I said, "You still here then?" And his comment was, in quote, was, "Yeah, they are really dragging this out." So it may not be him stalling, it could be his buyer. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested. Oh, and the other thing is, the original buyers, the one that fell through, were middle-aged towards elderly, not old like me, but with no kids. Perfect. Unfortunately, the ones that are moving in now have got twin girls, as he said, about that high. Well, it's not necessarily those that will make lots of noise and cause a nuisance outside my window, but it could be all their friends. If, like next door, the two boys there, all the friends come to this house. They don't ever go anywhere. And you get houses like that. My sister's like that. Everybody goes to my sister's. My sister and brother-in-law hardly ever go anywhere. People come to them. And you get houses like that are like the centre of the universe, and people enjoy going there, and people there actually enjoy having people round all the time, sort of thing. So we shall see, but he says a lot of stuff he's going to do and does very little of it. I mean, he's supposed to be getting a really big skip to put all the rest of the rubbish in, clear the sheds out and this, that and the other. Well, in theory, he's supposed to be moving out on Monday. Well, the skip's not here yet. It's weekend now. The intercom's still not fixed, which is of a personal interest to me. He's going to move out without fixing that, I know he is. So we shall see, but sometime in the near future I will have new neighbours. We'll see how we go. I don't get to choose, do I? You don't choose your neighbours. But hopefully they're just nice, quiet, ordinary people. That'll do me fine. We don't want gobby like up in the flat. We certainly don't want yappy dogs. See, now they're buying that house. They will be owners, unlike me, that's a tenant. They could have 3 or 4 dogs barking all day long. I don't know. I mean, when I moved in, I had to make very special arrangements to be able to bring my 2 elderly cats, because this place said no pets. Now, the government are changing the law on that sort of thing. You can't stop somebody having a home because they own a cat. It shouldn't be allowed, so they are changing the sort of rules for landlords so that you can't have your access to living accommodation should not be restricted in that way. So you can say no students, I'm happy with that, but not no pets. You say no smokers. I can understand that. That can damage the fabric of a property. If you've got smokers in the house, it gets into the fabric. And it's a job to get rid of it, I mean, although I've been a smoker, I've never smoked in my house. And nobody else who comes round that's a smoker, you can go out in the garden if you want to smoke, Don't have it in the house. It gets in, the first thing you notice is it gets in your clothes, In the days when you used to be able to smoke in the pub, you got to the pub and it was like you opened the door and like the smoke came out, you just thought, is there a bar in there somewhere? Oh, there it is, through the fog, and you spend all evening in that atmosphere. It ain't doing you any good at all. And as a smoker, I'd be adding to it, Oh, don't want to breathe your smoke, I'll have my own, thank you very much. But yeah, those days are all gone now, thank goodness, quite honestly. And now it's got to the point where some places are actually not allowing smoking anywhere on the premises, and that means in the grounds as well. You've got to go out in the road somewhere, you know, right out of the gate or the entrance or whatever, right away from everything. So our place where we have our show, where we had our meeting last Saturday or the Saturday before, that place is like that. Yeah, because they've got big double doors that open that come into the building, and there's a relatively small area outside and then the pavement where you can't smoke in that area. You've got to go out into the road or the pavement, because obviously if you're too close to the building, the smoke, every time those doors open, the smoke comes in. It's in the building then, so you know, they don't have it. So yes, you could say all of our liberties are being taken away. Well, in some cases you have to have those sort of things imposed on you for your own flipping good. I mean, they're going to have a go at all the junk food advertising. That's the next big hit thing. And you sort of think along the lines, the junk food is not healthy. People know that, but it's often the cheapest there is. When times are hard, you know, do you want to get a $1.99 burger, you know, or get some fruit and some salad stuff, you know. The burger's just there, isn't it? Wrapper in the bin, burger in the gob. So yeah, but it makes me sad. I'm still overweight. I'm not doing bad. We are dropping it, and that's for my own personal health. I've been told, you know, it'll help you, so I'll give it a go. But it's very sad when you see 4 arses walking up the road. Dad, arse. Mum, arse. And 2 little kids with the same. That's their life possibly messed up from such a low age, from such a young age. Part of that is these flipping things, these phones and things with little screens that you can carry around everywhere with you. It means you don't do anything. Too busy looking at that, you know, walk into the lampposts and things, too busy looking at that, walk out in the road and get run over. What is so important on that screen that you can't put it down? I find that sad, you know. It's a tool. I can understand using it to do lots of things, but not just constantly staring at it, you know. You can have them surgically removed, I believe. Anyway, I haven't got much else going on at the moment. As I said, I've got some tidying up to do in the garden, ready to head into winter. One big job left, which is cut the hedge, which we're going to wait until the depths of winter, when all the hedge clippings fall down in an area that's not still full of plants with flowers on, because, you know, it'll make life a lot easier. So that's the only big job left. We'll have one more go with the strimmer and do all the edges, sweep the patio, get the patio all nice and tidy, get all the clippings bagged up round the tip. That will be the garden then, apart from that hedge, until next year. And in the meantime, things like bulbs will be coming up. I don't look forward to winter as such, but I do look forward to those first signs of spring. And in this garden, that could possibly be the winter flowering cyclamen, if they've survived. Because they don't have any leaves, you know, you just plant the corms. And nothing happens until the blooms come up. The leaves come out after. So I don't even know if they're still there. They could have rotted, I don't know. But they'll come up in the middle of winter. And then the snowdrops, and we'll start seeing the bulbs. And I look forward to that. I look forward to the snowdrops each year. So. And other things. So we've got that to come. But quite honestly, the genus in here of orchids that will be the next big show, we hope, will be the cymbidiums. They're big plants. They're potentially, there's half of those plants are big plants, and they've grown a lot of new growth this year. And even if not all of the new growths produce a spike, they're still going to put on a good show. And some of the strong plants with all those new growths and all that root activity, they might be capable of 2 spikes on some of the growths. So that's the next big deal, quite honestly, will be the Cymbidiums. Now, don't hold your breath, that's not a now thing. I don't even think I've got any spikes starting yet. But I would hope to have something in bloom by Christmas time, or at least some decent spikes growing. And then they'll be blooming right on through into April, May time. Well, they did this year. So hopefully they will again next year. So that's the next big deal. The Phalaenopsis, I've got to get that shelf done for the kitchen. It's the acorns falling off the oak tree, and they've got quite a drop, and they do make me jump when I'm concentrating on something anyway. Yeah, so the Phalaenopsis is the next big move, because they're all going to have to come out of here. I've currently got the thermostat set at night to 17, which means it drops to 16 and goes up to 18 when it kicks in. That's going to start going down 1 degree at a time progressively through to the end of October, when I'm going to be down this year to 13 on the thermostat. So that means I'm going down to 12 to 14 interaction with the thermostat. And last year it was 15, this year 13. 2 degrees less is going to save me a lot of money on that heater, because there will be some nights during the winter when it hardly ever kicks on at that lower temperature, whereas at 15 it would have done. So that's the goal, is to actually cut down the winter costs. And hopefully a lot of the orchids now, the type of orchids I've got, are going to be happier with that lower temperature, or at least not complain enough to keel over. There's going to be quite a few that stop growing. My Vanda and my Renanthera and my 2 antelope dendrobiums are my obvious ones that are not going to be happy. I'd suggest they are going to be unhappy. There's so few orchids, I'm not gearing the whole place up to that small number. Yeah. My 2 black hair type dendrobiums, they'll just stop. They're not going to die. It's not cold enough to kill them, because these 2 seem pretty strong and they're growing well, got good roots. They should, and they've both been repotted this year, so they won't be in soggy media. So I think they'll make it. They should be okay. So we shall see. The Decers will be over the moon. It's just the job for them. It's possibly a bit too warm. They really are cool to cold growers, in their natural environment. But, I mean, there's some areas where they grow naturally in the wild that are covered in snow parts of the winter. Not permanently, but they get snowed on. They're pretty tolerant of cold. So they'll be fine. And there's a lot of them now that I've started to split them up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Oh, hang on, 6, 12, 18, 24, 25 pots. That's going to go up probably by 1 more, because the last pot, when I split it, will go into 2. So yeah, 25, 26 new orchids, new orchid pots. It's quite a jump, it's put quite an extra little percentage onto the number of orchids. But then I did the same with the Phalaenopsis, didn't I? I bought 8 mini Phalaenopsis, so I went from a few Phalaenopsis, most of which were Hannahs, to quite a lot in comparison. So there we go. I still can't think of another genus to try another genus. It would have to be a cool grower. There's no point in going for the warmer stuff. It's just not going to adapt very well if it comes in from somewhere else. I don't really want to extend the Phalaenopsis. I've got more than enough now. I'm happy with what I've got. I look after those, and we'll get some care videos out of those. We'll get some repotting videos, so I'm okay with that. Oncidium types sometimes do okay and sometimes don't. And I'm relatively confident that most of the Oncidium types that people get nowadays have been mass produced. They've been cloned. And they've been forced grown up to that point of blooming. They're often in rubbish media, and you bring home a plant that has been severely weakened. and then you've got to try and, you're almost sort of saying, oh, that looks absolutely smashing, I'll take it home and recover it. Because the chances are it's not going to be in really good condition. Chances are the roots aren't too clever. And it's been forced to such an extent, every last bit of energy has gone into getting those blooms up. And it's just exhausted. And sometimes they just stop and they just don't make it. And so, and there isn't any, you've got a job to find anywhere else to get them apart from the mass producers. So I don't want to go mad extending the Oncidium types. The Prosthetia types seem to do okay in here. Mind you, they haven't gone through a colder winter yet, but I think they should, you know, they bloom okay. The Radiata's out now, the Black Comet and the other one, the other black one, Black Summit or other, they all seem to be doing okay. And the big thing down on the floor here, the, I forgot what it is, Polycephalum or something or other, but I'm not too pleased with that plant. It's a smashing plant. You know, that does grow like a weed. It goes mad. New growths everywhere. They all bloom. I'm not too keen on the blooms. They warrant close inspection, and when you do that, they're stunning. But when you stand back, they've got long spikes, and they've got like 1.5 inch gaps between each flower up the spike. So they're all spaced out, and as a show, they don't actually look so good. So that may be one that, because it needs repotting sometime, and when it gets repotted it'll be split, because it's already far too big for my biggest pot, unless I go into like some of the big black ones or something. So we might actually pass that on to somebody else. If I could guarantee that some of the zygo hybrids were from the cooler set, because some zygos are quite cool growers. These strange plants, that species, you can get them coming from the mango swamps, growing soggy wet, and from the treetops. Not the same ones. So they're variable, very variable. So, but I don't think there's any cool growers in amongst them. So it's difficult to find another genus that I like, I'm not just doing it for the sake of it. I mean, quite a few people have said, well, you've got some Paphiopedilums doing okay, why don't you try frags? I don't like them. I'm just not keen on them. They don't do much for me. And if I'm going to have slipper orchids, I like the paphs. And my paphs now seem to be growing okay. If I see any of those that I like, I will get some more of those. I'm happy for that collection to get a bit bigger. I think I've got 7 now, which is not a huge number by any means. The main source of Paphiopedilums in this country is Mark Turner, Elite Orchids I think the nursery is called, but he gets a lot of quite rare crosses and imports, and as a consequence the prices are absolutely ridiculous. He's got plants £600–700 in his nursery for sale. Ridiculous. But, you know, if there's only 10 of them in the whole world, and that cross has taken 20 years to produce by crossing this with that, waiting 7 or 8 years for it to bloom, you know, to then cross it with something else. You can see it's just paying for people's time, you know, and rarity. So I don't need things that are rare. I need things that I like that will grow in here. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in things with such obscure names that I can't even say them. So, yeah, so I'm not going to do a spotlight today, sorry. The only thing I will have a look at, because I can get at it and it's easy to look at, and it's my best, and it's not only my best now, it's the best that I have ever had, is the Paphiopedilum Blackjack. I love these blooms. This is just good stuff. Yeah, the colour looks like it's been varnished, lovely sheen, lovely shape. It's got a lot going for it, that cross, and it can have more than one bloom. It can be multifloral. I don't think you get more than 2, but you can get double blooms. But what I like about this one is the plant. It's just a good plant. It's absolutely covered in new growths. It's got a really good root system. It's a strong, vigorous path, and it grows at a reasonable rate. It's just that that particular growth that's in bloom pushed ahead of the others. But following on behind, there are probably 2 or 3 growths that might bloom at the same time. They'll be after this one's finished, I expect. But yeah, I'd be quite happy to have some more of that. But this one needs work done. What do you think it needs more than anything? The number of new growths. Look how compact and compressed that plant is. The growths haven't got much room to move, have they? We might have to split that in 2. But what it definitely needs is to go in a bigger pot. The roots are ending up going round the pot and heading off round for a second time now. That's going to make repotting that properly incredibly difficult now, because it's got such a good root system. And they do snap. They're not that bendy. Loads of growing tips in there. It needs lifting out. Hopefully those roots haven't stuck to the pot, because it is shiny plastic. Hopefully it'll come out, and then it can go in a pot a couple of sizes, or at least one size bigger, with some new fresh media down in the gap around the outside. That will give the roots room to expand and move away from the centre of the pot. But yeah, a few more like that. Magic. The other ones I've got in amongst them, I've got a miniature, I've got a very, very slow grower. It's renowned for being reluctant to produce new roots. And often a new fan, a new growth, gets up to 2 years old before it even thinks about pushing some roots out. So if you lose the roots on that plant, you've got a rootless plant for some considerable time. And I've got a couple like that, and they are a bit of a nuisance. They're, well, more of a worry than a nuisance. You know, you sort of think, if I don't get some roots on this soon, the plant can't survive much longer without some new roots. Sort of get into that frame of mind. I will happily take some more Masdevallias. Most of them seem to be doing okay, but not all. I've got a couple of Masdevallias that don't seem to want to grow very well. But then I chat to Lynn, who's got probably hundreds of Masdevallias, and she's got a percentage that won't grow. And she said, you know, you try them in a different media. You try them in a different temperature, you try a different light, they just won't grow. They just won't do it. And sometimes you never know why before they actually die. And she said, you get another plant, it's doing really well, it's got loads of new growths on it, and you come in, you know, nice and fresh to do some watering, and it's dumped all its leaves and died overnight, that quick. So, you know, there's some finicky oiks in amongst the Masdevallias. But at least in the main, the temperature range in here now would suit them, so I'm not fighting against the heat all the time, just for those few months in the summer, on days when the sun's out. Just because it's summer in the UK doesn't mean the sun's out. Listening to a Scottish comedian about temperatures in the summer, and they were saying about the climate change and everything, and you know, in the Arctic or the Antarctic, I forget which was, you know, they've had temperatures of 18 degrees. He said people in Scotland are worried that this could become a trend, because in Scotland you sunbathe in temperatures colder than that. Worried all the tourists are going to go farther up north. It gets too warm. They won't go to Scotland anymore. Anyway, that'll do for today. I don't know what's coming up this week. Saturday is the second part of the archery course, and the long-term forecast, we've got a nice resident high pressure now, so we've got steady weather now into next weekend at the current forecast. That can change. It only needs a wind direction change and something moves, you know, something pushes in that replaces what we've got now. But at the moment we've got a steady high pressure, so we've got milder nights, reasonable temperatures during the day, comfortable to go out and sit and have your lunch, you know, that sort of thing in the sunshine, if the sun's out, into next weekend, which means the archery course should take place, won't get postponed and rearranged, which means the following Saturday I'll be going to the Bournemouth Orchid show. And whether Hannah's going to come or not, she hasn't made her mind up, so I don't know whether I'll be going on my own or not. I'm pretty sure Lynn's not going to go this time. Not feeling she's doing something else. I think she's away or something because it was the only weekend she could, you know, with a week, take a break sort of thing, so she might not be there. But I'm sure some of my other friends will be there. So there's quite a few joint members from the Wessex that I belong to and Bournemouth, and they belong to both. Well, most of those people will be there, and obviously, you know, being a member of Wessex, I'm going to know those quite well. And I know a lot of the Bournemouth people, although they've got, like us, they've got some new people in. So there we go. The archery course went very well yesterday with Tony. He was a bit late getting here, but where he lives, to come this way he has to go through Romsey, and he forgot the Romsey show was on and there were road closures. So he had to do some detours, and we made it with a minute to spare. We got there at 1 minute to 10, but it was pushing it a bit. Hopefully next time we won't have the road closures. Although it's funny how things go. The next Saturday, when we go to the archery, going there won't be a problem. But for me, coming home will, because it's the Ringwood Carnival. They'll be closing some roads, so we might have to take a detour right round the back roads of Ringwood to get onto the road to come here. It'll be 5 or 10 minutes out of our way, it's not a big deal. And I know those roads, I haven't got to faff about with a sat-nav or anything. So we'll manage. The problem you get is when you get to somewhere where the road's closed and you've got loads of people behind you and you can't turn around. That's when you get a serious problem. But being an organised event, that won't be allowed. They'll do a road closure on a roundabout, so that you know, as you come onto the roundabout, you can't get off, so you either go off at the next one or you go back round and back the way you came and try a different way. So it won't cog everything up. It'll be sensible, I'm sure. But yes, so there we go. That'll do for today. And thanks to everybody who supports the channel. I won't say my support is waning, but it's thinner than it once was. If I went back a year and put up one of my Sunday chats and looked down through the comments, there would be 3/4 of those comments would be from people that commented frequently. And I'd say probably half of those are now gone. That seems quite bad, but then there are new ones that have come in, you know. So things do change, but yeah, the number of watchers, the number of views, the number of comments has dropped off during this year. Could be me. I could be making videos that people aren't interested in anymore. Could be making rubbish videos and people are going somewhere else and not coming back. All these things can happen. Sometimes the poor old creator doesn't even know why or how, why things have gone wrong. But I'm always open to comments, you know. And as I've always said, I'm open to suggestions. If you've got a video you'd like to see within my confines, these are the orchids I've got. I can't do a video on Phragmipediums because I haven't got any, yeah? Can't do Lycastes, I can't do Catasetums, I don't grow those. I won't do a video on something I know nothing about. I need to at least have one, if not more. But yeah, it is a trifle worrying because I am very dependent on the income from this channel to top up my pension money to be able to keep this place going, you know, so it is quite important to me. But you can only do so much, and I can extend that statement. You can only do so much, and you can only do what you can do. You know, I can't wave a magic wand and suddenly start making totally different videos, because how? How could I change enough to make a huge difference when the subject matter is very niche, really, or our orchid world, isn't it? But certainly the larger orchid community that we once had is not there now. That I can say. It's gone, it's not there. I mean, I'm not going to rattle them off now, but I can think of at least a dozen people where their channels interacted. They weren't standalone. And they talked about each other, you know, and things like that. It was a better community than we've got now. But there is still an element of that community, and that's good stuff. You know, that's always been what I've liked about the Orchid channels. So let's hope it all keeps going. Let's hope the difficult part is, let's hope some of the new ones take off. That is just so much more difficult now. It's so much more difficult to get going with the new channel. Still, people will still try, and some, might not be many, but some will succeed. And just remember, you might have your favourite channels. If you don't go looking for these new ones, you won't find them. You know, even viewers who don't have a channel as such, they can watch the same channels over and over again. Well, if those people don't venture out, the new ones don't get a look in, do they? Because nobody's gone to look for them, nobody's found them, and nobody's sort of started watching a channel they'd never heard of and thought, that was flipping good, subscribe, I'll have some of that, I hope they do more videos. That's YouTube, that's how it works, you know. So thanks to everybody who does support this channel in whatever way, as I've always said. We've got the memberships, we've got the Patreon site, we've got the Buy Me a Coffee thingy. What else have we got? I always forget something. Yeah, I've forgotten it again. See, I always forget something. And then there's the Facebook group, the link. All these things are linked in the description, in every description, not just in this one. That set of words and links in the description goes on the bottom end of every single video. They're all the same. There's just a little paragraph at the top which talks about this current video. That's unique to that video. So there we go. Thanks for your support. Thanks for just being around. Thanks for the comments. Without those, I get up in the morning, I've got nothing to do. So keep me busy. Keep me at it. And keep your suggestions coming, and I'll do what I can. No guarantees, but if you don't ask, you won't get, that's for sure. And I will see you in the next video, which won't be tomorrow. Monday is, that I have made up my mind. In most circumstances, Monday is my day off, where I don't do orchid videos. I might do something in the garden, but as I've said, is it worth bothering to film it? I don't know. I shall tick away on that other channel, you know, and see how it goes. You know. But again, limited subject matter. There's only so much in the garden. The garden's only so big, you know. There's only so much you can film. And it's coming up to winter when there'll be next to nothing going on. You know, going out there, working in the freezing cold, that's for sure. So I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed, it's nice to do that. It's nice to support the channel in that way, because it's something YouTube can see. And while you're there, if you've lasted this long, you can at least do a thumbs up. I don't mention thumbs down, because I always mention thumbs up at the end of the video. And if you've got to the end of the video and you don't like it, why are you still here? Duh! So I always assume somebody who gets to the end of the video must have liked it, or they wouldn't have stayed. That's how you show your appreciation. Tick that thumbs up. And I will see you next time. Bye for now.